everyone, to our Yale and Hollywood Fest panel. We've got some amazing filmmakers here. Welcome to the festival. We're so glad that you're joining us again in 2024. We have Dani Wilson, Maya Weldon, Nathaniel Dolquist, and Spencer Jamison, incredible filmmakers and creative minds, and we are so glad that they are part of the festival this year. So I'm going to ask them about their projects. And first of all, intros. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your film, just so we can orient your voice. Dani.
Sure. Hi, I'm Dani Wilson. I am the writer, director, editor of Tutto Peppe. This was actually my senior thesis, so a project culminating my double major degrees of film and Italian at Wesleyan University, not too far from New Haven, which is actually how I got connected with my lead actor, Eason, who is a current sophomore at a little-known university called Yale, studying acting and theater. I first wanted to just say I feel very privileged and grateful to be in the camp of such great films and such, as you said, creative minds. I think something that really struck me kind of watching the different films in both the whole festival, but also particularly this category, is just how different they all are, but also some rather similar. I'm looking at you at capacity, and just certain questions that I think we're all dealing with and talking about, and I'm happy to be dealing and talking about them with you. So that's a little bit about me and my film.
Well, thank you for being here. Maya.
Hi everyone. My name is Maya Weldon. I graduated last spring, so this is also my thesis film. It's very autobiographical, although it is also, it's autofiction, I guess you would say. Um, yeah, I mean, the film is about politics and my life growing up with two moms in San Francisco during the 2008 election. And yeah, it was just a joy and a blast to make. Other Yaleys involved were Ariana Lurie, who is my producer, who is now a current senior at Yale. Um, and yeah, so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Nathaniel.
Hi, everybody. My name's Nathaniel Dolquist. I was in Ezra Stiles, class of 14 plus one, because I took a year off to sing with the Whiffin' Poofs. And I am the producer, writer, and one of the lead actors in Hulkling and Wiccan Love is Power, which is a basically web series that I shot a year ago about two gay Marvel characters who at the time had not been introduced to the MCU, and one of whom was just introduced in Agatha All Along, which was worked on by a lot of Yaleys. So I was the only Yaley involved with my project, but we had a really great time. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Absolutely. Spencer.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. I'm glad, Dani, I'm glad you brought that up because I was watching them and I was like, oh, there's such a through line. That's really nice to see. I'm Spencer Jamison. I am a graduate of the Yale School of Drama. I was in the class of 2018. Wow, the time is flying. And I'm the writer, director, lead of At Capacity. My co-lead, Jake Ryan Lozano, also graduated from Yale, and one of our producers, Lisa D. Richardson, is really one of my best friends now. She also helped produce, and she graduated from the School of Drama as well. At Capacity is a romantic comedy short that is basically this unexpected kind of relationship intervention leads to a really lovely and serendipitous night between a couple. It's a proof of concept for a feature that I've written that is also a romantic comedy that's set in the Virginia DMV area, which is where I'm from. And I'm hoping to get it made. So I've been in the, festival circuit for this year, made it in 2023, and it's been, collecting audiences all over the country, thank goodness.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So my first question for all of you is please tell us about the origin. What's the origin story of your film? What was the impetus? What was that spark that gave you that initial creative drive? Dani.
It's a great question. And I think if you had asked me a couple years ago if this is what I would have made my thesis about, it was not at all something that was in my brain space. I'll give a shout out to one of my housemates. He made me watch My Dinner with Andre and said, what would happen if instead of them talking to each other, they talked to the waiter instead? And I thought, Zach, that's a great question, and I'm going to write a little movie about it. So I think just I've been considering this film kind of a love letter to the beginning of my early 20s and asking those questions of, are we doing the right thing? Are we good people? Are we living it up to the our fullest, and kind of processing those in a short form film is maybe the origin and also the questions that I'm trying to answer in my film.
Maya, what about you?
Yeah, so I think when I was in my thesis class workshopping potential ideas for my thesis, um, I kind of came to the realization, well, I was in a photography class, and I there was a short film inspired by a photo series about someone's relationship to their mother, the photographer's relationship to their mother, and her mother's kind of like offbeat story of coming to America from Russia and being like a Russian bride. And I have a very offbeat kind of like early childhood story, and it also seemed very relevant to me because, um, you know, we're all experiencing politics, and I think, you know, as a child, I was experiencing it in this very like kind of interesting personal and also public way. So that I thought that my best writing was autobiographical, and so I was like, I have to make something that's autobiographical because it's going to be the best thing I can make, and I wanted to make the best thing I could make. So, and I was also inspired by this photo class, but also I want to give a shout out before I pass the torch to someone else, um, or pass the mic to someone else, to my wonderful actresses Antonia and Anya who are in the audience, and then also Cam who scored the film, and also Fred who I've worked with before. So thank you all for coming. I see you here, and I love you all.
Thank you for coming. We're thrilled you're here. Um, Great shout out. Nathaniel, what about you? What was the origin story?
Yeah, I have long thought that there are not enough queer relationships in Marvel and in the superhero genre in general, and think that that is an extremely effective way to, get that idea out there. So I was just going to do a photo shoot actually as Hulkling, who's one of my favorite queer Marvel characters, and a friend of mine, Evan Gambardella, who played Wiccan, and I were on the phone talking about it, and he said, "Why are you pulling your punches? Why are you not telling the story that you want to tell? What are you afraid of, that Marvel will sue you?" And I was like, "Yes." They did not sue me yet. But so I was as nervous as I was about it. I was like, well, let's do it. And I put this web series together and put my marketing and publicity hat on and got it out there, and went to Comic Cons for a year, and painted myself green and wore the $2,000 pair of green bat wings everywhere. And it was a lot of fun. So it was, it's a story that's always meant a lot to me, and it was only in the past really year or so that I really had the bravery to be like, I think I can add something to this story, and I deserve to be able to like tackle this material too.
Spencer, what about you?
It's one of those things where I really, as a creative, want to be genre agnostic, and so I want to work in different, I want to do musicals and sci-fi projects. But when I come back to what really inspired me as an early like young woman coming into adulthood, it was growing up watching romantic comedies and kind of getting a sense of, okay, what are people talking about? What does it mean to be a woman? And sometimes those tropes are really, obviously problematic, or kind of supporting unhealthy relationships to self and relationships to love and marriage. But I wanted to kind of take that, marry it with my love of like The Diplomat and The West Wing and these really hearty political dramas, and see how we can kind of reinvigorate the romantic comedy genre with more language, with more wit, kind of calling back to the 1930s like screwball comedies where people were like they were like going back and forth, his girl Friday, and it happened one night. And so I really also want to infuse this genre with a lot more black and brown bodies, a lot more queer representation, a lot more just like diverse voices that reflect my community and looking at the ways in which we'll sit, on my couch and have conversations for hours. And I feel like this is just like a snippet of it tonally, but hopefully in the full-length feature, we'll be able to explore even more with a large ensemble because I also love ensemble pieces. So that's a little bit about my, inspiration behind it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Um, my next question is, what is the biggest lesson that you learned from making this project? Dani.
I think the biggest lesson was definitely the idea of the people that you surround yourself with in creative projects can really be the difference in whether it's successful or not. And I think having really strong collaborators who you feel both safe with, but also pushed by. So having two actors that Mia and Ethan really took to themselves, crafting these characters that I had written and bringing their own sense of their own lives, but also their own perspective as actors to the set really, I think, caused those moments. I mean, we were talking about a scene, a sequence, a line where Ethan hands Mia a cigarette and says, "You definitely smoke." And that was complete ad lib on set, and I think is one of my favorite moments. I think there's those little nuggets of whether it's boom op really knowing how to hold a boom or it's something in a more creative capacity. I think having collaborators that you work really well with is definitely a big lesson that I took away.
And I think you're muted. But I
I
think I
was
was
muted. Thank you. I said that is very wise. That was my comment to Dani. Um, that is so true. True in filmmaking and in life. Maya, what was the biggest lesson?
Yeah, I feel like I really want to second what Danny said about the collaboration. Like 2008 was by far the most ambitious creative project I've ever taken on, and it would not have been possible without my team, who is so they were all so committed, and it was genuinely just this team effort. And I guess just like it was basically my first time directing in this way where there were people to direct other than myself. Like in the editing room, like I had an editor and I had a colorist and like I had this whole, all of these people who were better at their jobs than I could have ever been. And I think it really just it showed me what directing was, which is that you have to know exactly what you want and you have to communicate it and very precisely. And it's all about that communication and that trust between your team and you. And it's just like it's awesome. I love it. It's so much better than trying to do everything else alone, everything on your own. So yeah, I think the collaboration is key. It's so cliche, but it's true.
What about you, Nathaniel?
Mine was definitely that being a good producer does not mean spending as much money as you can, nor does it mean always getting the best thing or the thing that you want. Sometimes a budget limitation is actually a really great way to be creative, which, anybody who has ever produced any theater at Yale will know that you don't have a lot of, you got about one shoestring to use, and most of it probably goes to buying rights for whatever show you're doing, even though it's very generous that we got to do that at that school. But, yeah, I really had to get creative with funding. I self-funded my entire project. I literally like used my day job to pay for it. And I would not do that again. I would do it partially, but being a good producer is a very important job. And when I work on subsequent projects, if I hire someone to produce it, I need them to have that skill set because it's about doing a lot with a little as opposed to trying to find a lot to do the most, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. Um, humility is important too. Spencer.
I'm definitely gonna echo what Danny and Maya said, especially about the collaborators, because I want to give a shout out to my DP, Cooney. I brought him on really early. he's known me for the majority of my life, and because I was an actor first, so I was in my brother's project, so I inherited Cooney from my brother, and we started early because I knew I was going to be in front of the camera and behind it. So making sure that everyone who was hired, everyone who was working really wanted to nourish the set and make it a place that feels peaceful, a place that feels easy. Uh, it's also why I brought Jake in as my comrade my I wanted to say co-captain, camaraderie, all the words. Sorry, I'm losing my words. But as my co-lead, because I knew that we would have a rapport. And I gave everyone the vision, but also trusted that they each were uh like more skilled, like what Maya said, more skilled than I am in each of their jobs. So just creating a set that's really peaceful and easy and trusting your collaborators and nourishing them. Whew, I'm telling you, I'm tired over here. I hope you followed all of that.
We did. Wise words. Um, my last question. Oh, hello, Lisa. Welcome.
So sorry.
No,
Hi.
welcome. We would
Well,
love to hear about your a brief introduction and your project, so we can orient you in your creative place to
thanks.
go.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about that. That was a Zoom glitch on this end. Yeah, so my name is Lisa, she, her pronouns. I'm based in Minneapolis, and I've been a theater director and producer for 30 years or so, and started making films, especially this particular series of Westerns, in 2020 when a big theater project about denim jeans and the history of denim jeans got thwarted by COVID. We couldn't produce it. So we pivoted the research we had done on the Wild West into three short films that are connected. And that's how I started making films. Honestly, it's 4 years ago.
Well, welcome.
Thank
Uh,
you.
we have a question. Um, for the panelists who went to Yale undergrad, how did the film program at Yale help you develop your filmmaking skills? Anyone can take that.
I will totally jump on that if that's okay. My favorite joke about my Yale education is that Yale did not teach me how to have a career in acting, but it did teach me how to have dinner with rich people, which is an arguably more important skill. I joke a little bit, but I actually help students with their college applications now, and some of my students do apply to Yale hoping to pursue film and also acting in theater. And one of the things that I tell them is that it's so annoying to me that what my professors told me at Yale is true because they said what's important is that you learn how to collaborate. What's important is that you learn how to produce, that you learn how to do all of these things yourself, and that you develop your own artistic voice. And for probably the first 7 years that I lived in New York City, I was furious with them because I felt like they had not prepared me adequately. And I was like, what good are my text analysis skills? What good are my collaboration skills when I can't get a job or make a living off of this? And I was so angry about it. And then I realized that I should just do what I did at Yale and make my own stuff. And that has been a huge pivot, a huge breakthrough and key for me because when I started making my own stuff and using those skills of collaboration and producing and going out on those creative limbs, I wound up in places where the other people who were making those films were also hanging out. So I have met a lot of people at Comic Cons. I've met a lot of people at fan events. I have met a lot of people at premieres and other things that I would never have gone to those things if I had just waited around for somebody to hire me and instead made my own stuff. So as angry as I was that the theater studies junior requirement was to produce somebody else's senior project, yes, I'm very grateful for it now because it actually wound up being a really important and wonderful part of my life, honestly.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
My,
yes, I unmuted myself, but yeah, I completely agree. I mean, my thesis class with John Andrews, shout out to John Andrews, who's been running narrative writing and directing for so many years now, the advanced class, the thesis class. Like our class was probably about, I think it was like 7 or 8 people, and it was a 4 hour class every Wednesday morning. And it was a full year, and basically we just got full creative freedom in those 4 hours to create ideas, scratch ideas, iterate on ideas. And that was just very special and beautiful. And I think people do criticize, Yale for not, teaching production in the way that they should. But like ultimately, at least in my life, what I'm trying to do, I am trying to, make a living in this industry, hopefully. But at the end of the day, the goal is to like direct and to write and to have these ideas come to life. And that is a skill that you have to develop. It's a real true skill, and it's a muscle to flex, and Yale forces you to do that. They don't give you another option. You can't go become a DP. If you want to do that, you have to do that after Yale, or learn the DP skills or the hard set skills after. And there's pros and cons for sure, but in my class, there was, you have to pay people to sometimes, and it's hard to like get a budget to pay people who know what they're doing to do what they do. But I think that forcing you to be the kind of captain, if that's what you're interested in doing, is like really, really valuable, because it's so easy to say, I'm going to become an editor because I want to make money, but it's really, that's not what I want to do. I mean, I think editing is a beautiful art form, but it's just not what I want to do. So for me, yeah, I think was, and I went in for ethics, politics, and economics. So like, I never knew that I wanted to be a filmmaker until I was already there. So I didn't apply to other schools. So I guess I didn't have a choice really, but luckily it worked out. So that's how Yale helped, I think, me.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Or I've got another question.
I do have a quick one just to answer the second part of this question, which is, did you seriously consider alternative schools like USC or NYU in terms of pursuing a possible film career? The answer to that is yes. And the other thing that I actually don't really advertise this to my college essay kids that I help with like their applications and stuff, but a Yale education goes so far beyond what I think those two programs offer. And I don't say that disparagingly. It's just you do get better technical skills probably going to USC or NYU for film, and you are making a lot. But I was on stage and made more projects than any of my friends who went to conservatories, Carnegie Mellon, UMich, Ithaca. Like I had a lot more opportunities to actually perform and make things. And the Yale experience for me, what was so rich about it, like you can get those skills after Yale. Yale is a very, very special place because of all of the things that we know about it, the residential colleges, et cetera. No, we could go on, but we don't have to. And so I think that, in terms of leading a rich life, the Yale education is really, really magnificent in that it prepares you to think in lots of different categories and in lots of different ways, as opposed to training you to be a technician, which there's nothing wrong with. And you're going to need to get that skill for yourself afterward. But it is, as far as a college education goes, those programs are very different and have very different pros and cons, in my opinion.
Thank you. For my final question, what is your piece of advice for rising filmmakers, people who are just starting out? What should they take away and go forward into the world to create their films? Lisa, I would love to get your thoughts on this.
My Yale experience was in the School of Drama as an MFA student in directing, so it's a slightly different. Yeah, okay. So maybe these films are all really beautiful, by the way. I just wanted to say thank you all for your beautiful artistry. It was really great to watch them. And my advice is, as what I've come to understand, both as a maker of theater, a director and a producer and an actor, but also now that I'm making films, is surround yourself with the people that are going to uplift you and that bring what the piece needs. I often say, I want to be the holder of the best ingredients So on my sets, because I'm fairly new to film, I'm just finding my feet around how to direct a film versus a piece of theater. I am usually the least experienced filmmaker on the set. I'm not the least experienced artist, but I'm the least experienced filmmaker. So I make sure that my DP, my producer, my line editor, my editor, whoever, all my sound people are like top notch. And that means then I'm humbly learning from them and very much trusting them with my vision. And I definitely couldn't do it without that. So now, and I'm not saying like everybody has a budget that can do that. And my budgets aren't huge, but they're probably bigger than some short films. I made my films for maybe $30,000 or $40,000, which is not a lot, really. Um, but all the money goes into paying like really good people. So that's my advice, and I think that works as a theater producer as well. Your humility in terms of how important you actually are, by taking that down a notch and going, actually, I need to really listen and tune in and hold the space for this really exceptional group of people that I've been able to bring together. That's the key.
Thank you. Dani, what is your advice?
I think that was really well said, Lisa, and I think that I echo some similar points. I think the idea of giving yourself grace for things that you might not be the most there's muscles that still need to be flexed, particularly for my project. I discerned that I need to flex my screenwriting muscle a little bit more, and that was definitely a point that I sought help for, and that was something that I felt lucky to have, as we have talked about a lot, collaborators who kind of lift you up. But I really liked what Maya said too about this idea of having people around you who can do things better than you can yourself. And that tends to create projects that are really special. So giving yourself grace and allowing yourself to do the things that you're really good at, but also have other people help on those things that maybe you are still figuring out.
And just make a lot of shit, make bad
Yeah,
all the time.
good advice too.
Just make terrible, terrible failures.
Maya, what do you think?
First, I guess preface by saying yes, make bad stuff all the time, like, and make a lot of it. Just keep making, I think is piece of advice number one, whether it's no matter like just keep creating in some sense, like whether it's I mean, I like making TikToks, like it's the same thing. But that being said, when it's time to I don't know with this project, what I think really like made it feel like something I don't know that really made me feel proud of it was I kept asking myself, because I had one senior year to make one thesis film, and I guess every time you make something, it's your chance to make it, right? And I was just asking myself like, what's the best possible thing I can make? What's the best possible thing I can make? And for me, that question I think is always what I'm ultimately looking to answer, but the answer is normally what is the thing that is the most raw and like the most scary and the most, that feels so like true that it's in hyper specific. I mean, not always, there's a million types of stories out there, but you know, um what feels where do you not want to go? And that's probably a good reason to go there to some degree, even though it's like taxing. Like, I don't know, I just saw The Substance and like that was, I mean, I'm a huge fan of The Substance. I shouldn't go on a tangent about The Substance, but like, I don't know, be bold. Be bold is what I would say. I'll end there.
Always good advice. Nathaniel, what are your thoughts?
Oh, thank you. Well, the biggest thing is so I really encourage everyone not to put an expectation on your art to pay the bills, especially not right away. And I did that for all of my 20s in New York. And I was always a little bit behind the eight ball because I was trying to make my art pay for my life. And that kept me very poor. And when I embraced owning a company and becoming an entrepreneur and building my own business, I suddenly had more money than I had ever had to make my own stuff. And one of the other things that was huge for me is I learned the business. I learned how much things cost. I learned how much you need to pay people. I learned how much studios buy things for. I learned where they buy them from. I learned, all these different things. And learning the business, you have to do it. You must do it. You need to know what the guilds do. You need to know how much the guilds cost to be in. You got to figure out, you got to balance your spreadsheet so that you can actually have the freedom for your creativity to do what you do best. And putting that really not first, because I think the art is first, but putting that much closer to the front has been extremely helpful. And the other thing is, I spent a lot of my 20s convinced that the only way I would succeed as an artist is if I were on Broadway. And through a lot of therapy, when I released that dream, not saying it's never coming true, but when I took the pressure off of that dream to either come true or I'd be a failure, I was suddenly free to paint with more colors and realized that what I had been doing was telling an artist that they could only paint with one color or use one type of medium. And there's so much more to it than that. You have so much more to say than just one medium. So I really encourage everybody to free themselves from what they think they should be doing or what they've put as their goal and embrace lots of different ways to make art and tell stories. When I started working through social media and doing TikTok and Instagram, I got a bigger audience. And then more people wanted to see my stuff. And then I went to a party once and some agent from CAA, I was like, "Hi, I'm Nathaniel." And they're like, "I know who you are. I saw Hulkling and Wiccan. It's on your Instagram. The algorithm fed it to me." And I was shook. I fell out of, well, I was standing. I was gonna say I fell out of my chair. I fell down. Because making my own work and like making something I loved had gotten me talking to people I wanted to be talking to. So I think it's really important and it's hard, but yeah, that's it from me.
Empower yourself. There we go. Thank you. Spencer, you will close you will close our panel.
My goodness, that's so much pressure. Hi, Lisa. Also, I went to the drama school as well, so I was in the acting MFA.
Yeah,
It's a little different than being an undergrad, but
I think so. Yeah, but still, yeah.
yeah, still community. One thing that I want to echo is the idea of community, but adding on to that, creating a holistic life for yourself.
Mhm.
That is the thing that has healed me. That is the thing that has kept me curious. Curiosity is everything because it's gonna drive you to want to look up the things, like to want to go and study under people, to want to go and shadow, to want to write, to direct, to work with actors, to get deeper, to understand how the editors do what they do. And our curiosity is our greatest gift. And I think that is something that is really lost in this day of constant social media, constant over inundation with opinions that sometimes we're not sitting with ourselves and with what we need. So, I mean, even right now, it's like I just wrote down what you said, Lisa, too, but like I have my card pull that I did today, kind of recalibration. I have a beautiful community of people that love me regardless of, whether I'm up or whether I'm down. And the last thing I'll say is a lot of people talk about, our work or what we do or different industries is like climbing a mountain. And I've shifted that mentality to being more like traversing waterways. So it's like I'm on a boat or I'm on a kayak and I'm just like, sometimes the waters are rough. We're whitewater rafting out here. Some days you're like really smooth sailing. Sometimes you're in an ocean where there's just so much depth that you can go into and explore. But it's less effortful because you know that the tide is moving you along, that the flow is moving you along. And that's been really helpful for me because that means that like a year from now, I could be on a completely different waterway, but it still feels authentic because I've been allowing it to align with what feels right and what feels joyful. So that's my advice at this point. And I wish anybody who ends up watching this, who ends up engaging with our films, that you feel, our intentions behind it are as artists, as directors, as creatives, that they're a gift. So thank you.
Well said.
Thank you. Thank you. Wise words as well. We got a little bit philosophical, but had a lot of fun. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being part of this festival. Thank you for your creativity and your generosity of spirit, and hope to see you next year. Thank you
Mhm.
so much.
Everyone. Thank you.